Sleepy. I'm going to go ahead and wing this video. There wasn't a whole lot of forethought that took place prior to recording this one, unlike many of my other little videos, so please bear with me. So the video that I posted a couple of days ago, so far it has around 30 comments, and so far from what I've seen, every single one of them has been left by a self-identified antinatalist. And there's no real discussion taking place. There's no real constructive discussion taking place. And I've been giving more thought to this lately, and this has probably been reflected in some of my more recent little videos. I should start by posing a sort of question. When it comes to this particular topic, when it comes to discussing this particular topic, philosophy, do you have a certain goal in mind? Are you attempting to accomplish something in the sense of maybe convincing people of your particular point of view in the hopes that they will conduct themselves accordingly? Are you attempting, and whether that just be attempting to get people to give greater consideration to this obviously very crucial decision that many people will end up making in their lives at some point, the decision as to whether or not to have a child, or in reminding people to just hopefully take additional precaution as to avoid having an accidental, unwanted child. Or if you are attempting to convince people that it is always completely ethically unjustifiable to create children, and life is a horrific imposition that is entirely unjustifiable, there's just no getting around it, and everyone should just not engage in the procreation. Or are you just attempting to sort of blow off some steam, release some tension, and sort of kind of feed off of like-minded people who share your particular point of view, and let me also say that if it is just if it is just the latter, if it's no more than you just wanting to blow off some steam, to express your frustration with your own coming into existence, and the fact that this was done oftentimes without any thought to the potential for consequences, you were forced into this, no choice of your own, only to suffer and decay and die for no discernible purpose. This is completely understandable. I don't know what else I can really say. Yeah, if that's what if you have no actual aim in attempting to convince people of anything, and you either just sort of kind of recognize the futility in attempting to do that, or you just don't have any desire to, that's understandable. But if your aim is to actually prevent people from being brought into this hell that we have found ourselves in, and I know that some people will perceive that as being an exaggeration, but I'm not. You see, I don't feel as though I am in hell the vast majority of the time. I've never really truly felt as though I am currently in hell. When I call this realm, this earth realm, hell, it is clear that there is hell to be found here, that there is great potential for suffering so great that the word hell is quite fitting to describe this place in terms of many experiences that are to be found here. hell is a fitting word for what can be experienced on this planet. So that's what I mean when I say that. So yeah, if your aim isn't in attempting to prevent people from being brought into hell and you just want to vent, I get it. But if your aim is to prevent people from being brought into hell, oftentimes through just complete negligence, complete thoughtless negligence, no, again, not even a deliberate decision oftentimes, let alone a well thought out one. If you are attempting to convince people that this is something that should be taken far more seriously than it is, you are very likely going about it the wrong way. The way in which you are attempting to convey this so as to prevent people from being thoughtlessly brought into hell. The way in which these ideas are expressed is very, very important if your aim is to actually prevent unwanted children, especially. Again, it should be clear that there should be a precedent. It holds a greater urgency in attempting to prevent unwanted children, accidental children, from being forced into hell than there is in convincing two kind-hearted, decent human beings from having a child. Not only are you less likely to succeed in convincing this couple from having a child, it's virtually, it's damn near impossible. But time and effort is just squandered on this aim when you consider the fact that most people, a large portion of people, are brought here not even as a deliberate decision, that you should be attempting to convey that this thing, this procreation thing, is something that people should take far more seriously than they do. That this is where most progress is going to be found. And again, the more thought I give to it, the more genuine contemplation I give to it, even if I had the potential to convince two decent human beings from having a child, I don't know if I'd want to be responsible for the sort of causal impact that could have through generations. It's the more I think about it, the more I recognize how messy that is, and even attempting to convince two decent human beings from having a child and the potential consequences that could come about, even if I were to succeed in this. Whereas, if I am to convince, in contrast, if I am to actually convince some 19-year-old idiot to just be more careful when fucking his girlfriend, so as to avoid bringing someone here accidentally, it is clear that one aim is far safer than the other one. I don't want to be responsible for two decent human beings from, again, it's not even, it's, Christ, it's just the fucking gall, the ego that I would have to have in order to believe that I even had the potential to do that, let alone having the it's just a far more safe, it's a safer bet. Just trying to get people to avoid having an accidental unwanted child when compared to attempting to convince people to not voluntarily have children that will oftentimes be quite well taken care of. And you can make the argument that oftentimes this is largely based on selfish desire, selfish motivations. But again, it is clear, just from the perspective of someone attempting to convince people of, not even attempting to convince people of the philosophy, but just attempting to convince people of the validity that exists in many of the arguments that the philosophy poses. Like, again, that there's no real good reason, there's no valid reason to create a person for the perceived benefit of the prospective person being brought into existence. And I don't know, man. It's just, again, it's very messy. Just the recognition that this life thing is a very complicated thing. I mean, it's not complicated in the sense that our origin as a species and how life has come into being, but from the aim of attempting to reduce and prevent purposeless suffering, to not be able to recognize that the causal impact of attempting to advocate for this philosophy, you could end up doing far more harm than good. And just that simple recognition that that is very, very possible. Again, if I was to convince someone, which, not saying I have that potential at all, but if I were hypothetically to convince two decent human beings, like, okay, no, that's too risky, that's too messy, I'm not going to have a child, I'm not going to mess with that, I'm not going to play Dr. Frankenstein. I don't know, man. I don't know. In summary, if your aim is to actually prevent people from being brought into hell and from having to experience suffering that is far beyond our own little subjective comprehensions, if this is actually your aim, it is quite clear that the way in which you attempt to go about doing this is very, very important. It is obviously crucial. The way in which you attempt to convey these ideas is far more important than the specific ideas themselves. If your aim is to actually prevent purposeless, unnecessary suffering.